In this video, I'm going to show you how to replace the fuel pressure regulator on this Ford Excursion. This is the 6.8 liter V10. It's located on the back of the intake. We'll have to remove the throttle body to get to it. Let's get started. I recommend starting by relieving the fuel pressure in the system for when we disconnect the fuel line. So what you want to do is locate the junction box that's in the engine compartment. It's going to be on the driver's side right next to your brake master cylinder and brake booster. It's got a cap that you can pry on a little tab on the front and open it up. The cap will pop off completely, giving you more access. This 20 amp fuse right here, part of the larger fuses, is the fuel pump fuse. So with some pliers, I'm going to gently pinch it, wiggle it. Watch out so you don't break it. There we go. Sometimes they're quite stuck. I'm going to set this aside. This cuts power to the fuel pump, so when you crank the engine over, it's going to fire the injector and release the rest of the fuel pressure in the system. All right, let's remove the intake piping that's here. This is an aftermarket cold air intake, so if you still have the factory one, remove any fasteners, clamps, anything that you have to remove to get closer to the throttle body. For me, it's just a few clamps, and I'm going to pop this off. Set this aside over there. Let's disconnect the throttle cables, cruise control and throttle. For this cable, you want to pull up on it. It just has a little notch with a cutout. And this main throttle cable, open up the throttle body, grab the cable, twist it, and wiggle it right out of its locking position, just like that. And then the bracket that holds both of these cables has two 10mm headed bolts on it. Let's remove both. Undo the spring, set the bracket aside, unplug the throttle position sensor connector, and behind it, this has an EGR block-off plate. Since this vehicle does not have EGR, but if you did, you'll have a valve with a tube here, and you're gonna just have to unbolt the valve off the throttle body. Don't bother undoing anything else, just two bolts, 10mm headed bolts, and that should come off. It's not going to move out of the way, but it'll just sit here unbolted, and when the time comes to pull the throttle body off, you can just pull that straight. Let's disconnect some of the hoses that go into the throttle body. If you have a heated PCV valve, you're going to have two coolant hoses running here. I'm going to pinch this off with some hose crimping pliers. That way we don't lose any coolant, just like that. Then, with the help of some pliers, I'm going to move this clamp out of the way so I can unhook the hose from the throttle body. Twist the hose a little bit, that'll get it unstuck, and pull it off. A little bit of coolant might come out, but as long as you pinch this hose, not much should. Let's do the same to this lower hose over here. I have a different device that'll pinch this. Just gonna squish it down basically. Make sure you leave enough room to slide that clamp back. Okay, set this aside. Now the rest are vacuum hoses, so you don't have to worry too much about anything coming out of them. But when you disconnect them, keep in mind they are brittle, so you don't want to break them. And just try to remember where they go. They will kind of fall into place where they belong when you put them back, but it is a good idea to kind of make a note of where they're supposed to go. Okay, take that off. If you move this out of the way, there's actually another hose right up here. This one off as well. All right, one more vacuum line here. Okay, set that aside. Let's unplug the idle air control valve all the way back here. Now there is a hose attached to it in the back. I'm not going to worry about that yet. Trying to get to it from here. I'm just going to unbolt the throttle body now, and as I pull this forward, we can much more easily reach that hose. So let's use an 8mm socket, unbolt the 4 8mm bolts that hold the throttle body onto the intake. This is basically going to form a rectangle. I know it's difficult to see anything other than this bolt here, but there's one here, one right back here, one right through this opening, and one behind the EGR block-off plate, or the EGR valve. This one is a little bit longer than the other one, so make sure that one goes back in here. There's your throttle body. Pull it off gently. There's that hose that we can now much more easily reach. Remove that, and we'll set this aside. Now we can finally see the regulator a lot better. There's a vacuum line going to it. I'm going to twist this so I can break it free and unplug it. I'll leave that there. Because there's quite a bit of debris and sand on top of it, I'm going to use a wire brush to just clean this off. There's a snap ring that we have to remove in order to free up this regulator. And I want to give it the best chance it has to break free and come off. Of course, we'll need some snap ring pliers for this. I'm going to go with some smaller snap ring pliers that I can fit right in these grooves at the front. Pinch this in. Now you want to be careful, make sure it doesn't go flying, because we're going to need to put this back in. Of course, if yours is in poor condition, you'll need to find a new one to replace it with. Mine's stuck, so I'm going to try to work it all the way around. Carefully take this out. I'm going to get the wire brush back in here just to clean the area. If there's a lot of debris here after the wire brush went through, just blow it off with some compressed air. At this point, you want to gently grab the regulator, twist and pull. That should get it out of its spot. Now, there are a couple O-rings that are holding it in here, and that's what you're fighting when you try to remove it. All right, there it is. You got to pull pretty hard on this one, so you have to have a really good grip to break those O-rings free, but here it is. Now when putting the regulator in, you want to make sure that the hole that it mounts in is clean and free of debris. I know there's rust around where the snap ring goes. That's okay, although it's not great. It's not where the O-ring seals up. I'm going to spray a little bit of brake parts cleaner in there. Take the regulator and press it all the way down in. Either fuel or brake parts cleaner, whatever's there, will lubricate the O-rings. And as you saw, it snapped right back in. Let's lock this in with the snap ring that goes right on top here. Get your snap ring pliers, stick them right in the groove. Make sure this doesn't go flying. Squeeze it and set it into the groove. Perfect. You want to make sure that it is fully seated, so with the help of a pry bar, kind of press it in, pry on it, wiggle it, spin it around if needed. Just make sure that it's actually locked in tight. If you try to pull this, it obviously should not pop out. There we go. That just seated fully. All right, this is all seated. So at this point, we can reinstall the vacuum line that goes to it. And let's get everything else back together. Now take a clean rag and wipe off the surface where the throttle body gasket mounts. If your gasket came off with the throttle body, then discard it. If not, peel it off of here and then discard it. I always recommend installing a new gasket when it comes to this. Line it up, make sure it's sitting in position, and then take your throttle body assembly. We're going to do the same thing on the back side or on the bottom side. Wipe this off, and if there's a lot of corrosion or debris, you're going to want to scrape it with a razor blade. Mine's actually pretty clean. So I'm going to take the throttle body. Before I completely line it up, I'm going to install this hose on the back side. It's going to be a whole lot easier to line up now, as it will be later. Get this over, make sure that stays. And these are just thin paper gaskets, so you want to be careful with them. Slide this all the way back here. And we'll drop it down. Of course, have your bolts ready. All right, there's one. Just be careful with this. You don't want to tear the gasket. And then with this one lined up, we can more easily line up a second one. Doesn't matter which one, as long as it goes in. All right, and with two lined up, that makes it a whole lot easier to line up the last two. And now, let's gently snug them up. All right, everything is in position. Make sure none of these hoses got pinched. The torque for these 4 bolts is going to be between 71 inch-pounds and 88 inch-pounds, and an additional 90 degrees after that. Because there's a range and a degree specification, I'm going to go right in the middle at 80 inch-pounds on all 4 in a cross pattern, and then we're going to tighten an additional 90 degrees, which is a quarter turn. Let's double check them all. You want to make sure that your baseline torque number is accurate before you add 90 degrees to it. All right, 90 degrees being a quarter turn, I'm just going to take a ratchet and go a quarter turn. If at any point during this quarter turn it feels like it's too tight, just stop right there. You're better off stopping early and these still being tight, as opposed to either breaking the bolt or stripping the threads. All right, that right there was almost a full quarter turn, and that's exactly where I'm going to leave it. All right, those are all tight. Let's plug in the IAC valve. Make sure that connector clicks. Double check that that hose at the back is still properly attached, which it is. Put this hose over this way, so we can then take the vacuum hose that sat right at the top of the throttle body and reconnect this one, just like that. No hose clamp on this. And now let's go down here by the PCV valve, reconnect this main vacuum hose that has all the lines going off of it. And there was this one right at the top here, another vacuum hose. This went to the brake booster. Get that on all the way. Let's put that clamp on to secure it. Just like that. And at the top, we had this hose that had coolant going through it. Make sure this is bottomed out. All the way, perfect. And then just so we can release the clamps, install the lower one so that coolant doesn't just flow all the way down and through. Get this one bottomed out. Now we can get rid of our clamps, and then we'll put the hose clamps on to secure the hoses. right, this goes here. Everything is reconnected. Let's get the throttle cables back on. Spin this around, hook in the spring. Let's line these two up. Have your bolts ready. One bolt goes up at the top here, and one bolt on the bottom. Torque these two between 71 and 106 inch-pounds. I'm just going to go for 90 right in the middle. Plug in the throttle position sensor. Make sure that clicks. And now reinstall your air intake tubing, whatever you had. Of course, I have the aftermarket cold air intake, so I'm going to put that back on. But the stock intake that you had, go ahead and line that up and tighten up any clamps that you had holding it in place. All right, let's reinstall the fuel pump fuse right in the slot right here. Press it all the way down, and let's put the cover back on. It's got a clip on the back side that has to slide in. Once you feel it line up, just press it. That'll lock in, kind of like a hinge. Lock it down, and now let's build fuel pressure, crank the engine, and make sure it runs smoothly. Now let's cycle the key to the on position, back and forth. That's going to build fuel pressure in the system. When it's in the on position, you can hear the fuel pump run if you're in a quiet environment. And then after about 5 to 10 seconds, shut it off. We'll try again. This is going to have the fuel pump run, push fuel through the system, and then of course push all the air out. After about 3 or 4 cycles of the key, the engine should be ready to fire right up. Now it may stumble a little bit if there's still any air left in the fuel system, but it should start and run. All right.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.